Welcome to Dentology, the Business of Dentistry podcast. In this podcast, we delve into the non-clinical aspects of dentistry with inspirational guests from across the profession. You will hear incredible life stories, pick up valuable business tips and be entertained. I'm Andy Acton and I'm joined by my co-host, Chris Strevens.
So it's time another one with just me and you. No guest this time.
No. It's just us sitting here in our podcast room.
We are. And this time, quite often, by the time people get to Frank Turner Associates, they've kind of already worked out that they might want to work with an agent to sell their dental practice. But when you go to events and exhibitions and seminars and stuff, one of the fairly common questions is, how do I find a buyer? What buyers are out there? Who would buy my dental practice? So I thought it might be interesting just to kind of work through the options people have in terms of who's out there buying dental practices.
Options and issues. Because, what is it? When do you do it? You can't do it like Rightmove, can you? Or Zoopla, you can't, or whatever it is, Purple Bricks, or you see them sold for £1. But anyway, you can't advertise it. Well, you can, I suppose, but then the first thing you come across is, confidentiality. So how confidential do you want to be about it? And I
think in our experience, that's right at the top of the tree.
It is.
For the things that tends to bother people more than anything is they're worried their patients and their team are going to find out, and with good reason, because when you get into a process of selling your dental practice, it's not for today, but it is quite a long-winded process. It can take 6, 7, 8 months. And the nature of UK contract law is such that any part through that process, it can fall out of bed. And okay, not many do. It's a very, very small minority, but it could. Therefore, keep it confidential is really important.
That's why I think, as a starter, isn't it, really? That's why I think sometimes it's a bit weird when, we do see prospectuses for other agencies when they've got their name and address on it. I do find that a bit odd in comparison to, you want it to be confidential, but, okay, there's an NDA, but we all know what NDA's enforcement can be like. I just find that a bit weird, really, that your start point is, Dr. Acton of, I don't know, wherever it might be, Willesden Green, this is my practice and I want to sell it. It's like, oh, hello. Everybody knows I'm selling.
And I think before the finding a buyer, the start point has to be getting a valuation. You get an independent valuation so you know what it's worth. But people do have choices. They could use a forum. There's lots of online forums where you may be able to pair yourself up with a buyer.
But yet again, you're sort of exposing yourself in a financial business way, aren't you? Why would you really want to put that into an area of 1,000 dentists or however many with the potential that someone else is going to go, hey, guess what? Oh, I know who that person is. Unless, of course, you've got you create, I suppose, yourself as an anonymous post.
And I suppose also we see it and we have mechanisms to minimise this, but there are people who will just continually ask for details on a practice just because they're being nosy. They're just trying to find out, what's their magic sauce? How have they got the profitability to that level? Let me look at the figures and try and understand. So I think if you move into a realm where you have no control, you have to be quite careful what information you share. But the forums are out there, and that's almost become like the modern day version of an advert in one of the magazines, isn't it?
And I think I think one of the things that gets me, and I think we have to ask the sellers to understand, and some do and some don't, is because of the confidentiality and the nature of what's happening, it isn't like Rightmove, because in reality, if you're selling your house, you put it on Rightmove, you don't really care who comes and has a look at it or sees it online. And buyers, put your hand up. I will put my hand up, even though it's on a podcast. We always have a little nose to see what else is on for sale and all that sort of stuff, because we're sort of interested. But that doesn't happen with dental practices, really.
No.
So you need to, as we alluded to, sort of the first point is find out how much it's worth.
There's quite a lot of we've experienced this where somebody selling their practice is keen for only go to a select group. Have you got some special people? What are the kind of the upside and the downside of going to just a select group as opposed to the open market? And what does the open market actually mean?
I suppose that it probably depends a great deal, I think, on practice. If you've got a £10 million practice or a group of practices, the buyer for your £10 million group is somewhat small, so it will be select. But for the average and normal dental practice, I would have thought as a seller, don't you want to maximise the value?
Yeah.
And why would you go to a select group, especially if that select group are paying to be in that select group?
Right.
So they're paying to be in that select group, and part of your benefit is the fact of you can get that practice before it goes to the open market. So there's no true demand and supply mechanism working there. And then they will pay the fee to buy your practice. So you as a seller get it free. But is it free?
If someone's paying, there's a fee changing hands somewhere.
Yeah.
I remember that Netflix put a program out a few years back now called Social Dilemma. And it was in the context of using social media channels. And I think it was specifically about one of the big social channels. And it said that if you're not paying for the product, then you are the product. So if you're on a social channel and you're providing your content for free and you're providing your details and your information, effectively they're using that and they're selling that to people who want to sell products to you. But they said if you're not paying, then you're the product. So I guess that argument would apply to selling a dental practice for free as well.
Yeah, because who's your client? I'd say I find it strange, to go for a select group. And okay, it's easier. For sure it's easier, isn't it? Instead of trying to market your practice to potentially, I don't know, let's think Northwest London or Hertfordshire, which are probably the two most popular areas, but 2,500 people managing the interest, the information exchange, all those sort of things, the viewings, the follow-up. It'd be much easier to go to a select group of 20. But do you get true value? And I think the answer is no.
I think something else that you need to look for if you're looking to seek your own buyer is making sure they can afford it. Because there's lots of things in life that we like the idea of, but just aren't within our reach. So if you're sourcing your own buyer, you need to make sure that the person you're talking to is able to demonstrate their ability to fund it, and that's not them telling you they can afford it.
Of course they can afford it. Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, it's something kind of a bit deeper than that to make sure they've been pre-qualified by a bank or a broker and they can demonstrate they have a deposit. Because without the money, it will go nowhere. And because of that kind of protracted timings on the process, what you don't want to do is find yourself 3-4 months into the process and then find there's an issue around money. You really want to kind of get that bottomed out quite early on.
Because you'll start spending cost, won't you?
Yes, exactly.
Incurring money.
Exactly.
So I think that the how to find a buyer, and I think one of the things is you can do it yourself. I always think a good story is that chap that we know who thought he'd do it himself, and he put that advert.
He created the email address.
He created an email address, put the advert out, went into surgery 8:30, came out 1:00, had his lunch, mailbox was full. And basically, so many people were tire kickers. But then, as I think you said to him, well, what information are you going to give out? Because what people want, well, they want everything, don't they, really? If you're going to be paying £500,000 upwards to buy a dental practice, you're not going to do it in a handshake, are you?
No. But exactly. So it comes with complexities and also kind of grading buyers. Because there'll be first-time buyers, so you need to make sure that they have, the right credentials and experience to buy a practice. And okay, as an associate, you can talk to them about their clinical work, but have they deputised for the principal when they're on holiday? Have they been on any courses that might have helped them develop an understanding of the business of dentistry? So you've got the first-time buyer end of things. You might have a more experienced practice owner or own a number of practices, kind of where are they at? again, can they afford it? Can they borrow the money? And then you move into the buyer world of the smaller groups. The people who are acquiring practices might have 8, 10, 12 practices. Again, in the current climate, there needs to be some understanding about how they're going to fund it, because the funding situation, particularly with interest rates and inflation and the increased costs, that's affected the profitability of some of those kind of mid-tier groups. And then you move into the larger end of things. So there's different kind of groups of buyers out there, and it's also trying to understand what profile practice you have relative to who your buyers will be, because the buyers universe is quite large. But actually what you need to do is you need to trim it down to make sure you're talking to the right sort of people for your practice. If you've got, let's say it's a 2-surgery practice with no room for expansion, that is unlikely to appeal to corporates who typically are looking for larger practices. There's no point in kind of pointing your practice in that direction if it's not of interest to that part of the market. So there's lots out there. It's just kind of quite complex to make sure that you've got yourself positioned so you're attractive for the right part of that market.
I always think it goes back to right at the beginning, really, isn't it? If you relate your house sale, which is a way less complicated matter than selling your business. Selling your business, you've got to find the right person who will look after the team, can do the right dentistry, all those sort of things. I wonder how many people have ever sold a house to someone who's knocked on their door and done it themselves without anything assisting them. And I bet you it's a really, really small, if non-existent number. And that's your house. And valuing a house is a darn sight easier than valuing a dental practice. And the machinations of the legal process in buying a house and selling a house are so much simpler than a dental practice. So you wouldn't do that. So why do you think you might, what you need to really think about as a seller, what you're actually trying to achieve? And the answer is the buyers are out there, but what type of buyer do you want?
Yeah. Really good point to finish on. Really good.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Dentology, where we discuss the business of dentistry. If you like what you heard, please do subscribe where you found this episode. That would be amazing. And also follow us on Instagram.